Hey, y'all. Thanks for vibing with
CeCe and
ChiChi, where we talk about all the hot topic. What's your vibe, girl? How you doing? How's your day going?
girl, it's going good. Just busy, one thing after another, but the pace keeps going. How are you? What's your vibe like? How you feeling?
Girl, the same girl, just in and out from meetings all day long. That's it. Can't
Hmm.
complain and trying to hold this house down. Get ready for husband to come home. Nothing major, girl.
Oh, I
Nothing
know it's like
major.
the adult thing. You got the water going on. You're
Mm,
major adult mode. I got some
yes.
tea, my
Ooh,
little drink
dream
big cup.
big. Yes, as
You
y'all
know.
should. Dream big.
Well,
Go big or
that's
go home.
go big or go home. We've been talking about so much over the last few weeks, and just in general, we kind of revamping the show, working on a few new things with production. Of course, we're learning this new platform environment, and we're getting there. So kudos to us. We're still being very consistent. The
Yes.
other week, we talked about a few things. We got into our Bible bag. Of course, that's something that we're going to frequent here and there because I know you're trying to grow spiritually.
Yes.
And that's always something that's a goal of mine as well. So, the last topic we really touched on that we said we wanted to revisit before we talk about the other topics we have in mind
Mm-hmm.
is sex before marriage. Why is that a no no? Why does God speak against that? So,
Mm-hmm.
have you come across anything that kind of stood out that kind of like led you to believe like, oh, this is why?
Okay. I mean, I did some searching and I
Mhm.
mean, it kind of took me to Corinthians chapter 7, verse 1 through 2. But I feel like kind of just 1 through, you can just keep reading to about 10. And all I pretty much gathered was, well, in general,
And that was First Corinthians 7, 1 through 2.
yeah, 1 through 2, but pretty much 1 through 10 is what I was reading on. And I
Okay.
just saw that I believe God said that it was immortal. I could be wrong. I'm still like looking immortal to have sex outside of your husband. Or it was a sin, but I don't know. It's pretty much just telling me that it's a sin, that it was not right to do. But the rationale that I pretty much got from reading this is just that when you marry your husband, you're pretty much his, and you're to be his sexually until death do you part, literally. So even if you are to divorce, you aren't still supposed to be with another man, or that's considered adultery. And I have heard that before, but I see it now in the Bible. The only way that you can, even if you divorce, go to another man sexually is if your ex husband is dead. So I'm just like, whoo, that's
Yeah.
deep. I'm like, wow.
It the Bible also talks about, and I'll have to find the scripture where it says, like, yes, if they die, if you become a widow, then you're free. Or
Yes.
if your husband leaves you and commits adultery, then you are free
Okay.
as well to go and
Okay.
move along with your life. Now, I think that's in First Corinthians, like you brought up.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but that whole chapter, the principles of marriage, is what the title says in my Bible
Yes.
for chapter 7. Yours says that as well.
Yes. Teaching on marriage is what mine says.
Yeah. So, and it also talks about like the believing husband and the unbelieving wife and things like that. So, if your husband is not a believer, then they're not under that same type of restrictions as you are,
Mm.
and vice versa. Like, if your husband's a believer and you're not, then it's like there's different rules for that as well. But I think what you said pretty much touched on like a man. Okay, so what verse you talked about? Chapter 7 of First Corinthians. Um, Verse 2, nevertheless, because of sexual immorality, let each man have his own wife, and let each woman have her own husband. Let the wife render to his wife the affection due to her, and likewise also wife to her husband. So the wife does not have authority over her own body, but the husband does, and likewise. So basically, when you become one flesh, like in the very beginning, and you
Okay.
have your husband, y'all are for each other essentially. And
Mm.
so if you break that covenant, you're letting another person come in, and that's kind of like a violation of that unity of oneness that you've
I see.
established.
So it goes both ways, is what you understood from this too. So from
Yeah,
the
it
husband.
goes both ways. Men are required to be faithful, and so are women. So it wasn't like, okay, husbands, you could do whatever you want, which is completely different from the Old Testament, because the Old Testament, as you know, men had
Mhm.
multiple wives.
Right.
But in the New Testament, it strictly prohibited, and pretty much that was what's established moving forward. The
Right.
one woman polyamory is out of the question. I mean, in some countries, African countries, even polyamory is still a thing, but
Right.
we know that still goes against what God is ordaining. Um,
Mhm.
the thing is, in Corinthians, it is the apostle that's writing this, and it's inspired by the Holy Spirit. So it's not necessarily Jesus's words, but
Right.
we know that the writers were given a divine revelation from the Heavenly Father to write these words.
Right.
So these things are really written to like protect us and instruct us so that we don't have so many hardships. As we know in today's time, it's
Right.
important to be monogamous and have one partner, because then if you don't, you're risking sexual STDs,
Yes.
broken homes, and kids outside of those homes, or any type of things that can cause
Financial struggle, shoot.
financial struggles. Yeah, the
Hmm.
collapse of the household. So I think it gets deeper. It's also kind of hard to say because in that the following verses, verse 8 of chapter 7 of First Corinthians, it says, "But I say to the unmarried and to the widows, it is good for them if they remain even as I am." Paul was writing this, and Paul
Hmm.
was not married.
Okay.
There's no scriptures of Paul in relation. And we don't know how old he was, but I think scholars say something around like in his early 20s. A lot of the apostles were in their early 20s. Jesus
Okay.
was crucified at 33. So
Hmm.
they were fairly young individuals, you know.
Right.
But Paul says that, it's good for them if they remain even as I am. But if they cannot exercise self control, let them marry, for it is better to marry than to burn with passion. So that's
Mm.
why a lot of people try to get married, because they're like, I don't want to burn.
That's so deep. Okay. That makes sense
Hmm.
because if you don't marry and you're engaging in these sexual desires, then you're committing multiple sins. But if you marry and you commit to that one person, you can exercise your sexual needs, but with that one person, and you abide by you're like exercising whatever uh, but I don't know the word. You're exercising your rights basically within the Bible.
Yeah, your
So
sexual urges are being satisfied in accordance to God's will.
there it
Because,
is.
like you said, if you do it outside of that, the
Right.
wedding bed is defiled. And also in like Galatians chapter 5 and
Mhm.
verse 19, these acts are considered works of the flesh. And supposedly these works of the flesh are completely opposite of the fruit of the spirit, which he breaks down the fruit of the spirit in verse 22. But the works of the flesh in verse 19 are everything that goes against God, that separates us from him.
Mhm.
And a few of those things are adultery and fornication. So also some other things, yeah, so we'll leave it at that. But the thing is, people go and break down what is fornication. We know
Mhm.
adultery is if you're married and you cheat, but
Right.
fornication is considered sex outside of marriage. That's what a lot of
Right.
people kind of classify that as.
Right. Okay.
So then people mention, like, well, what about masturbation and all this self pleasure? How does that work in the scope?
True.
But people argue that that's still against God because that's not within marriage.
But you're doing it to yourself. So you're not doing it to someone else. So I mean, I guess I gotta dig that up because I mean, if you're doing it to yourself, you self pleasure. You're not doing it to someone else. You're not committing adultery. I don't know from what we just learned in these verses. It didn't say anything against that.
Not
So
verbatim.
Right. So that's definitely debatable. So Guav Vibe Squad, if you know something, any scriptures that says that you know what you should not be, doing self pleasure to yourself, it's against what the Bible speaks on, and you drop the verse or the chapter down below. Let's talk about it. Or if you think sex before marriage, if what we read or what you have learned in your teaching, if you kind of interpret that different, let us know.
And one last thing before we move on to our next topics, because I know we have a few we want to cover. But
Mhm.
right before chapter 7 and chapter 6 of First Corinthians, verse 18, even a little bit before that. Okay, so let's go to verse 16 of chapter 6. So, chapter 6, verse 15. Do you not know that your bodies are the members of Christ? Shall I then take the members of Christ and make them members of a harlot? Certainly not. Or do you not know that he who is joined to a harlot is one body with her? So, joining means sexual intimacy. So, if you're sexual to a harlot, then you become a harlot technically. For the
Mm.
two, he says, shall become one flesh. But he who is joined to the Lord is one spirit with him. So it says, flee sexual immorality. Every sin that a man does is outside of the body, but he who commits sexual immorality sins against his own body. And then that's when it says, or do you not know that your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit, who is in you, whom you have from God, and you are not your own? So
Mm.
basically, until you get married, you belong completely to God. You committed to God. So basically, that's another thing you will be going against when you
Yeah.
have sex outside of marriage.
Well, there it is.
There it is, y'all.
There it is. A little food for thought.
Food for thought. Food
Yeah.
for thought. So this kind of aligns with the next topic I want us to talk about, and that is what are some of the key factors that make a relationship last? Like, we talk about being sexually intimate and the importance of that chemistry, but we also have to talk about what are the other factors that make a relationship last, in your opinion?
I guess I'll speak for myself. One thing that I must see is love. So definitely love. We both have to love each other. We both have to be spiritually binded. We have to, believe that God comes first, have faith in God. And then my third thing would be loyalty.
Oh,
So having faith in God, having love, and then loyalty, and then honesty. So I guess I got four. And then honesty. And then if we have those things, I think my foundation is okay to start building. So I welcome conflict. I welcome disagreements. I welcome learning. But if we have love, we know God is first. We have respect, trust, then I think that's fine with me. But if
I
I
love
can't
how you
trust
say that.
you, then I can't do
You said
anything.
if that's what?
If I can't trust you, then I really can't do much.
Hmm. No, that's real. I definitely agree. And so when you just break it down to those factors, it makes you really think like, if that's all you really need, then is our society lacking that? Those things? Are people not trustworthy, not loyal, don't know how to show love? Because to me, we look for so many different things like chemistry and compatibility. And those factors don't necessarily have to include chemistry or compatibility. I
Right.
mean, love is love, and trust, you're supposed to be truthful and honest to pretty much anyone. So it's like, why are these factors so hard to come across? It should be like the bare minimum almost. So there must be something else.
Right. Well, I think the chemistry comes with time. I feel like I
Mm-hmm.
think chemistry. So a lot of this stuff. Well, let me retract. So the love is going to come with time,
Mm-hmm.
but the trust is also going to come with time.
Mm-hmm.
But the telling the truth is something that it comes immediately. It's something that will even keep me interested in you. So if I notice that you tell all these white lies, then I won't stay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Respect is something that happens immediately. So if you're not respecting me, then I won't stay. But then once we have those two things and then we keep communicating, then we develop love. And then with love, then you get the chemistry. But I guess I have to get the respect first. I got to see that I can trust you. Then of course you know God first. I guess those three things are the first things that I need to see before I continue. And then as I continue, the love comes. And then with love, you would eventually have some type of chemistry, because it's really not all about physical. Like if you have love, you will fall into that chemistry because they respect you, you trust them, you feel protected, so that chemistry will come. You know, in my opinion, and I think that's it. And then I mean, that's for me. I'm very simple, like so that's kind of my thing. Now, why are we lacking it? That I don't know, but I feel like, and I'm not going to say a lot of people. I mean, I don't know if people are telling the truth. Like,
Mhm.
I don't know if a lot of people are telling the truth. There's a lot of people lying. I'm just going based on what I'm seeing on TV. So a lot of people lying out there. I'm just like, why you lie to that girl? You know, I mean, so I don't know if people are telling the truth. And people go with their intuition. So if I feel like you're lying, then you're probably lying. So I don't know if people being respectful. So I don't know, but it's really simple stuff. But I think maybe people overlooking the simple. Maybe you're buying me
Mhm.
all these purses and bags and all this stuff, but you're lacking the necessities. So I don't know.
That's really deep. And Vibe Squad, that's definitely something to think about and kind of ponder. It's honestly something for me to really consider because it could be more simple and maybe we're making it more complex, or it really could be that it's hard to find honest, trustworthy people that want to follow God and be obedient and have them, have God as their authority and want to do the things that a husband does. And so I think a lot of times it could fall on both parties,
Mm-hmm.
women and men, may be so hurt that they don't know how to trust, they don't know how to be honest, they're not honest with themselves. A lot of people do not take accountability.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you are working on yourself and you are healed, a lot of these things are very obvious.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think sometimes people don't really have the strength or the capacity to see if that person is really going to be able to grow and change and develop the things, those major factors that you mentioned, if they don't already have that intrinsically within them. So
Right.
people are not trying to see, like, once they see that you're doing these white lies or you've been unfaithful and it's been shown more than once, it's kind of like, but I do think we need to give a little bit more time and have conversations to really see how people operate, to see if those factors are going to be there at all in any way, potentially, if that's what you're looking for. What do
Yeah,
you
I was
think?
actually watching Love and Hip Hop, the most recent episode, and I heard something that made me think. Safari is like, oh my gosh, like why they was attacking him about how he did Erica Mena, whatever. And then Safari is like, I mean, why are ladies not so that why they're not soft and nurturing and things like that? And you know, have y'all thought about that? And the lady was like, yeah, the lady. So what's her name? The other girl, Sierra, was like, well, we start off nurturing and loving and stuff like that. But then after we started seeing your DMs and all your
Yeah.
lies and all this stuff you're doing, then no, we're no longer this loving person and things like that. So maybe, you know, that respect, if you start off, the guys start off respecting and doing certain things to me, and then now we're in it, and then you just change your face, then yeah, now that's also going to cause some disconnect in the relationship. So I say just be real with who you are in the beginning, so that you know if you the person decides to follow you and join, you know, flesh with you, they at least they're not shocked down the line. Like just be yourself. If you rich, you're rich. If you're not rich, don't fake it.
Right. Because people are going to find out the truth anyways.
Mm-hmm.
And don't get mad when somebody finds out the truth or call you out about something that you probably apparently need to work on. They're probably coming from a place of love. And I know we talked about that. Like, you're real, the person that's really for you, they're going to call you out and challenge you on things. But I like the part you bring up about the reality TV, because I was listening to this podcast. One of my friends actually sent it to me.
Hmm.
I don't know if you know who Dr. Umar Johnson is. I believe
Mm-mm.
that's his last name. But Dr. Umar, UMAR,
Okay.
he's on the Breakfast Club, girl. He's on all different platforms. He's basically a Pan Africanist. And so he believes in all things regarding the African diaspora and unity. So he was on this podcast with like two or three other young guys, like millennial guys.
Mm-hmm.
And he was basically like, Black men, y'all need to be accountable for women being aggressive with y'all. Like,
Mm.
you have to understand the background and the hurt behind that. Like, y'all want to sit up here and be upset at them for feeling how they feel or responding the way they respond, instead of being like, I know you're hurt, and being gentle with them and receiving them out
Yes.
of love and care, instead of just going back and forth and battling them. Because this has been a long, engraved, indoctrinated situation that's been going on way before we even came about, and we're dealing with the repercussions. But dealing with the repercussions is not resolving that hurt, that deep pain that women have experienced over time. Like, it gets really, really deep when it comes to some of these dynamics that we're exploring with relationships. But yeah,
Like
Dr. Umar was like, men, y'all need to be accountable.
I like that. I like that because
He
like
said
you
it.
said, I think they're lacking that too. Men, we understand you're strong, powerful, masculine, but when a lady's actually voicing their hurt and being vulnerable to you, just like you said, just under like, so you know what, I hear you, babe, like, and listen to them and nurture them as well. Like, and that will go a long way. But if you start, like you say, battling back and forth, going back and forth, first of all, you're not going to win a battle with a lady. You're just not. So there's no need to go that route. But if you show them, I think they should start using a little bit of more of that nurturing. I think you'll go far. It'll go a long way.
Yeah. And again, we're not giving any leeway for women that are acting like that. But again, we both have to play our roles. So if men are showing more grace and more gentleness and more protection towards the women, and if they see that women continues to badger them and bully and be rude and stuff, then maybe that's just not your woman.
Right.
So, but let's go ahead and jump into our last topic, because I know all of these have been really good, very insightful. We have one more for the Vibe Squad. Of course, we want you to add your comments, any topics that you have in mind that you want us to discuss. Feel free to let us know in our comment section.
Mm-hmm.
So, our last topic is, and it goes right in line with everything we've been discussing, are relationships 50-50
Hmm.
in your mind? Like, do you think, based on your marriage of 10 plus years,
Mm-hmm.
would you say relationships are 50-50? Because I had this conversation um, with my mom, actually. My mother, me, we were just chatting it up and stuff. She'd been married for umpteenth years at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and she was like, relationships aren't 50-50. And that's where people get things misconstrued.
Okay.
Relationships are dependent on who's strong at that point, who sometimes it is 50-50. Y'all may come across that sweet spot, but sometimes it's 80-20. Sometimes it's 60-40, and you have to roll with that, the ebbs and flows, because you're dealing with a completely different human being and y'all are trying to work in accord.
Right.
So, how do you feel about that 50-50 narrative?
No, I agree with what your mom said. I don't think everything is 50-50. I think you just, and just how my household, you get what you get, both parties, and depending on what the load is in the house, you guys just, it's really, in my household, I really lead, I let my husband lead me. So he kind of just
Mhm.
lets me know, okay, babe, we need to do this, this, and this. And I pretty much just do it. If I have any questions or concerns, I let him know. But I just he pretty much is very good at organizing the house and letting us know what we need to pay, and I just pretty much follow his lead when it comes to that. And I think that's been working out thus far with us. Um, but I don't think it's 50-50. If one person falls short, then the other person picks up the slack. So I kind of just let my husband follow his lead and just go from there, and that works out for me. I'm just very transparent. Whatever I get, I just say this is what I have, and we just started. It's one person take care of this, and we just make sure everything is covered.
Yeah, period. Yeah, I mean, how else really, should it be? Because a lot of people say automatically, well, no, my man needs to pay, all the bills. That can be very challenging in times that we live in now in our current society. So I think it's very important for us to be able to mature in our thought process
Mhm.
and kind of give a little bit more space for partnership, because a marriage is a partnership.
Right.
And we want a lot of the things from the past, where men are the sole providers and all these things. But times have changed. Women work just as hard as men. We talked about double standards. Women are healing and getting their emotional well being taken care of, encouraging their men to go to therapy, something
Mhm.
that was not going on before. So I think because of that transition, we kind of need to give each other a little bit more grace to really live within that. So that means like somebody may go to therapy. You may have been going to therapy for 20 or 10, how many ever years? 2 years before you get married or something. And your husband, although a great person, may have never experienced any type of healing journey when it comes to therapy. So then it may not be 50-50 as far as your healing journey goes. You know what I'm saying? That person may have become more evolved in their outlook because of the work they put in? So does that mean that person, y'all can't work together and figure it out? No, but that doesn't mean that other person has to be disrespectful and rude just because that other one has gotten the help that they needed to better themselves, and vice versa. The other person can't look down on that person. Well, you haven't gotten any help. You haven't been trying to heal yourself and work on yourself. It's just not really balanced in the moment, but it's also a way for you to kind of acknowledge like, okay, this may be something that you haven't worked on. You may be a little weak in this area. I may be a little bit stronger. So what can I feed into you so that you're getting stronger in that area, and then we can help each other later on?
That's when you know you have a positive relationship, because you
Hmm.
can be in a toxic relationship and you not even know it. I think it's very important to find out the right spouse, because it can either make you or break you.
Yeah.
So if you're with a negative spouse that doesn't do those things that you just said, like you notice that your spouse has this weakness, and instead of uplifting them, you turn them down. If that's the type of spouse and relationship you have, it will rip you to pieces. But if you
Mm-hmm.
have the type of spouse that you just said, that if you notice I'm weak, you try to help them on that so that they become strong and things like that, that's when you know you have a healthy relationship. So, it's very important, even though, everybody, we want to get a good spouse, but it's important to take that time and find the right one, because you're in this with this person 24/7. It can really make you or break you. Like, it can really make you or break you. So, take the time and make sure you don't ignore those red flags, because a spouse is so important. Like, you don't want somebody to come in a relationship and you must pay 50, you must pay, because you're the man, you must pay all of it. That's double standards. Even if the man is rich, you want to show that man that you're there to help them. So even if you have little coins, help. They may tell you no, but that's one thing. Like I mentioned this before in my other relation, in our other episodes. That was one thing my husband said that it really stood out for me, because when we met, I took my last little dime and I wanted to buy him something really nice for Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
I did not have to do that. But he noticed that I wanted to give, and that's what stood out. So even though the person is rich, well to do, you know, do for them too. Everybody wants to, be treated nice. So I don't know.
Yeah,
It don't
I
have to
agree.
be 50-50. Help, do whatever. It's one flesh, it's one household. Do whatever you need to do,
Yep.
and it'll pay off.
Yep, do what you got to do. We're advocating for healthy relationships. We're advocating for, self growth and accountability and awareness and finding somebody that's going to be good for you, that fits those basic factors that we talked about, and realizing that it's not going to be 50-50 all the time. These lessons here, we're learning together. We're learning with you all, Mod Squad. So remember to always